talking SEC, college football, and more. This is AP as we see it.
I'm all about that action. I'm all about that action. I'm all about that action. I said I'm all about that action.
It's time to lock in. We're talking SEC, college football, and more. This is AP as we see it.
Hi, I'm AP Stedham from LA, Lower Alabama. This is AP as we see it, a weekly syndicated 1-hour show discussing the Southeastern Conference, college football, and other sports. Welcome to the show. We have quite a show lined up for you this week. We're going to be discussing the NCAA basketball March Madness with the SEC men's and women's. They're right in the thick of it at this time. The Sweet 16 has arrived. But anyway, we want to thank our sponsors first. And we want to especially recognize Greer's Markets. They're in Alabama, Florida, Mississippi with 29 locations. They have Lucy's Recipes, and she has a book out. You can order that at the property. All their 29 locations, you can find that and online as well. They have the groceries to go that will deliver to your home, your office venue, anywhere you have in mind. If you can't make it down to one of the stores, and remember, it's family, friends, and football, but it's now family, friends, and basketball for all this tremendous SEC basketball success on the men's and women's side. They have the weekly online specials, so you can check those out as well. They have the coloring contest for all the children each month. So March, they have the coloring contest for the children. They can enjoy that. And for all your special occasions, the holidays, the birthdays, the anniversaries, you can find all the fresh produce and dinner essentials, delicious food and snacks at unbeatable prices. And Greer's has that bracket competition going on right now with the basketball as well. But remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it. And then we also want to thank the Cortland Grand Hotel in Atlanta, Georgia. Every time I'm over there, that's where my preferred hotel when I'm in the city of Atlanta. They have spacious rooms. They're beautiful. They have a pool inside that has all the trees around, and the vegetation makes you feel like you're in the tropics somewhere. They have tremendous buffet breakfast each morning. The people that take care of me there, they personalize it for you, so you can have breakfast there and enjoy it. It's right in the heart of Atlanta, near everything, and have reasonable prices. But you get a spectacular hospitality there as well. So the Cortland Grand Hotel in Atlanta, Georgia, we want to thank them as well. And we just want to give you an idea about our social media. Make sure you subscribe to all the places that we're available on the Facebook, my personal Facebook at AP Stedham, and at the show at AP as we see it, and also the Instagrams, personal and show, and the X accounts, personal and show. And then also everything is on video, the YouTube channel at AP as we see it. And we have a lot of interviews that we'll do through the coming weeks. We'll be at the Final Four in San Antonio. All those interviews, we'll have them loaded up on the YouTube channel, AP as we see it. Subscribe, and my personal YouTube channel as well. You can find things there through the years. So everything, you can check it on the videos. And we also have the Spotify. Everything is archived there, the audio. And then we're on 20 to 25 stations throughout the state of Alabama, heard in Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, and Tennessee. So make sure you subscribe and listen all these various places where you can hear AP as we see. We like to bring you the stories about the Southeastern Conference, college football, and other sports. We also would like to say our guest this week, college basketball analyst extraordinaire Richard Hendricks, was a two-time All-SEC performer at the University of Alabama, drafted in the pros by Golden State, ended up playing overseas in the EuroLeague, and was the MVP of the Euro Cup, won a championship there. He's going to discuss not only the men, but the women as well. So we want to make sure you tune in for that interview in segments 2 and 3. And so I guess we should get started on the topics. One of the topics we had discussed on one of our previous shows was the general managers in college football, that structure where you had the president of the college, universities, you had the athletic director, and the head coach, and the head coach they're hiring general managers because to take on that load of negotiation and evaluating and acquiring talent. So that's the structure where the head coach was able to hire and fire the general manager. Well, that's the way it is in the SEC, and I think that's the way it's going to remain. But we had an incident this week at Stanford University where Andrew Luck, the new GM, the former star quarterback for Stanford, All-American quarterback, number 1 draft choice, played for the Colts. He retired. He's now the general manager of operations for Stanford football. In the absence of an athletic director, he fired the coach, Troy Taylor. So this is the first time in college football that I'm aware where the general manager fired the head coach. Now, I was in touch with Stanford, and they say right now that's an evolving position. But I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if Stanford kept that model where Andrew Luck is in charge of all football operations, including maintaining the authority to hire and fire the football coach. Now, Stanford is a unique place. They think outside the box. They're recently new to the Atlantic Coast Conference, the ACC. So they're going to have to make some decisions here. And I firmly believe that Andrew Luck, and I had spoken to Andrew out at the National Football Foundation in Las Vegas, that gala, he probably has somebody in mind, because I don't think he'd make this firing if he didn't have somebody in mind. And so they're going to be moving on with a new coach. But I wanted to discuss the fact that would this ever happen in the SEC? I don't think you're going to see the SEC have a general manager and him having the ability to hire and fire the coach, because the athletic directors in the SEC, they're supremely powerful and make top money. I just don't see that evolving into a position, the general manager in the Southeastern Conference, where they're going to be hiring and firing a football coach. I just don't see it. Like I said, Stanford is unique and different. And like I said, I think that position with the Stanford Cardinals, you may see Andrew Luck in charge of all football operations, hiring and firing the coach, because it reports directly to the president. He came on board with that stipulation. So, but I don't think you're going to see that with the SEC. But it is fascinating in this new age of college football where the general manager, they're making close to $1 million, some of them coming from all backgrounds. We discussed in one of our previous shows. They have quite a bit of importance and authority, but hiring and firing coaches in the Southeastern Conference, I don't think that's going to happen. Anything could happen, as we know, in college football, college athletics. People have different ideas. But I think in the Southeastern Conference, they're going to maintain that model of the general manager is underneath in the organizational chart of the head coach. And the pros, as we discussed, it's the owner of the team, the president, the general manager, the head coach. Sometimes the head coach is on the same level as the general manager. Sometimes the head coach is the general manager. But I just think in the Southeastern Conference, unless somebody thinks outside the box, you're going to see that same structure with the head coach having that authority to hire and fire the general manager. It's not going to be the other way around. One other topic we want to bring up, the Alabama quarterback situation. University of Alabama, the quarterback situation. I think that's the most important topic, I think, in the Southeastern Conference this year to start the season. There's other places around the country where they're having competition. Notre Dame, Michigan, Ohio State. Some of the top teams in the country are having quarterback competition. But at Alabama, you have 3 people that are vying for the position. Ty Simpson, the one who has the most experience, been there 3 or 4 years. He's waited for his chance, and he's a good quarterback, but he could not beat out Jalen Milroe. And Kalen DeBoer never thought it was a time to substitute him, even though Jalen Milroe had some bad games. So Ty Simpson has the most experience. You have Austin Mack out of California via the University of Washington. He came with his coaching staff, big quarterback, 6'5", 230, 240. Ty Simpson's about 6'2", 215. Austin Mack, big arm. Now, when you're in California and you commit to the University of Washington, your coach leaves, you don't come all the way to the state of Alabama. I don't think he has any ties here. I don't think you come here to sit on the bench. So he's going to be given a fair shot with his coaching staff, especially with a new OC who recruited him to Washington. So that's a dynamic that's a little bit different when you're talking about the quarterback position in Alabama. And then you have the sensational high school player of the year. I was over in the Maxwell Gala in Atlanta, and he was presented that National High School Player of the Year, Keelan Russell. So, and he's about 6'4", so he's slender, probably 210. I'd say at the most, but he's gonna beef up, I'm sure, when he gets on the proper weight program and the nutritional program as well at the University of Alabama. But I feel that one of these quarterbacks, I think, will not be on the roster come the start of the season, because if Austin Mack is named the starter, you can feel that possibly the freshman understands that he's going to get his chance. Maybe he redshirts this year, maybe he plays in 4 or 5 games. But if Austin Mack is the starter, maybe Ty Simpson, he hits the road because he's been there all this time and he's not named the starter. If Ty Simpson's named the starter, you possibly could see Austin Mack, because, as I always tell people, they are driving by graveyards looking for quarterbacks. And then Keelan Russell, I think he's going to stay. He's committed to this staff. I think he understands he's a freshman, and it's unusual to start a freshman. Jalen Hurts started at Alabama, and we know what happened there. He was the most outstanding player as a freshman at the quarterback position. But anyway, we're going to be right back after these messages with AP as we see it with our guest extraordinaire, college basketball analyst, Richard Hendricks. So we'll be right back with AP as we see it after these messages. Hi, I'm AP Stedham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greer's.com and use Groceries to Go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it. And we're back with AP as we see it, and our very special guest, a friend of the show, a friend of mine, all SEC twice at the University of Alabama, coming out of high school, everything, Parade Magazine All-American, McDonald's All-American, All-American. Richard Hendricks, currently SEC analyst, college basketball extraordinaire. Richard Hendricks, welcome to AP as we see it.
Hey, AP, thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Richard, I have to ask you this question as a member of the SEC for many years. Did you ever believe they would have 14 teams and set a record by three teams in the SEC men's basketball tournament?
No, I never thought this would ever happen. I mean, this is to me, as a basketball guy from the SEC and from Alabama, it's a dream come true. I mean, to see the quality of this league from the beginning of the season all the way to now, from top to bottom, has been a joy to watch. To be courtside and call these games, it's been an elite matchup night in, night out in the SEC. And I'm even more happy to see that now you have 7 teams in the Sweet 16, and an opportunity for 6 of them to move on to the Elite 8. It's been fun to watch.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Richard, when you're looking at some of these matchups, we just want to delve into them a little bit. Going to the East, you have Duke is in that region as number 1, but Alabama plays a BYU team. They like to score points.
Well, I think that's going to be a really good matchup for Alabama. You know, Alabama is a team that has struggled against teams that are able to post up, slow the tempo, and make it a grind-out game, as they saw last game against St. Mary's, but they had enough firepower and hit some shots from the outside to get it done. This is a matchup that I think plays into the hands of what Alabama can do. They can get up and down. They can shoot. Richie Saunders is a really good shooter that can get it going quickly for BYU. They have some good inside play that's active on the defensive end and on the offensive boards. But I think Alabama is going to have to continue to be who they are, get up tempo, hit shots from the outside, and continue to defend. The defense is going to be the key in March, and they're going to have to defend for an entire 40 minutes all around the court, particularly in pick and roll coverage, to do a really good job to finish off those possessions with strong rebounds.
Richard, don't they have quite a few foreign players, BYU, on the roster?
I think they might.
Right?
Anytime you have that, that's always something where you know that you have guys who grow up in a different environment. International basketball differs from American basketball because it's a little bit more team-centric. And when you have guys who are going to be focused to playing for the team, That's
Yes.
always a tough team to beat. So this is a well-coached team, and this is the reason why you're in the Sweet 16. There's not an easy team, easy out at this point because they're all high-quality teams.
Richard, you speak from experience after being drafted by Golden State, second round, I believe. You ended up in the Euro League and was on the Euro Cup team. You were the MVP, then won the championship. So you speak from experience when you discussing the foreign basketball players. I always thought of them as having more skill generally than the American players shooting the basketball and passing.
Well, there's a big emphasis when it comes to European basketball on fundamentals. And the environment is different when it comes to training compared to how it is in the American game. You focus a lot on skill development, and you practice on the professional ranks twice a day. The morning practice is going to be devoted to shooting and skill development. And then you come back in the evening and you'll have a practice that's going to be devoted to the team building and competition. So it's the reps that you have that makes these European players and the international players excel at the rate in which that they do. In the American game, you see in the youth level, you see far more games, particularly in the AAU system, far more games to practice time. And that type of comparison of the two, where you might have 6 or 7 practices to one game, as opposed to in America, you have 6 or 7 games to one practice. You're able to see some of the players who have the athleticism come over here and be successful.
Yeah, I always wondered why that system from Europe didn't travel across the Atlantic or other places to America, because that's one facet of the game where they have correct, and I think we're in the wrong on that in the American side.
Well, there's no money in it. You can't charge for a drink and practice. Games, and I charge a kid and their parents a wristband of $30 where they can watch all of the games for one session and come back later for another one. And we play 10 games in this week. That's a lot of money to be made. So it's the marketing aspect of it and the financial side of it that's made a big difference in the two. But when it comes to the skill development, if the international players do have the players that have the physical tools, then it allows them to come and be competitive. Now, make no mistake about it, American athletes and American basketball players are still the best by a long shot when you talk about the volume. But it's not a surprise to me that you can see a Nikola Jokic or a Luka Doncic or Giannis Antetokounmpo to be amongst the elite players in the game all over the world. Because if you have the physical stature, you match it with that type of practice regimen and the skill set, then you can be a top player.
Richard, that's what makes you such an extraordinary college basketball analyst. You can pronounce the names.
I like to pronounce them in another language, too, if you give me enough time. You never know.
That's outstanding. We're going to look at the West, Richard. Florida. Todd Golden, coached at the University of San Francisco, his team, number 1 in that bracket, that region. They're going to be playing Maryland. And then we have Texas Tech, number 3, playing number 10, Arkansas. Maryland's number 4. But Florida, Richard, my opinion, I believe they're the best team. They're the most versatile. Now, whether they win it all, who knows? But what are your feelings about the University of Florida?
Well, you speak about the international flavor and the players that you have that are playing for the team. Todd Golden was a professional basketball player in Israel around the same time that I was playing for Maccabi Haifa. He's a really good point guard and understands how he can utilize that type of play on his team. He has several international players on the team. Alex Condon from Australia, Ruben Chinyelu is Nigerian, and he's been able to use a lot of that depth and that style of play to be impactful. I don't think that's a team that when you look at the starting lineup, you can say, hey, it's just 5 starters. They go 6, 7 deep, and you can say it's 7 guys who are really starters type players on that team. They play well connected. They are extremely confident, and physically they have the personnel that allows them to play multiple ways. They can outscore you. They can grind it out and play a physical half-court game. And they can have 3 guards with Walter Clayton Jr. and Will Richard and Elijah Martin who can score with the best of them. So this is a strong team. Now, they have run into some tough players and some tough teams in the NCAA tournament so far with Norfolk State and UConn in the first 2 rounds. But they definitely have the class to get it done all the way to the national championship.
How about that, Richard, that Walter Clayton Jr. Escaped Rick Pitino, a guard who can shoot and made All-American, escapes Rick Pitino. That's amazing.
It is, absolutely. Listen, in this day and age, in the NIL transfer portal time, anything can happen. But, he's an outstanding player. To me, honestly, he probably is the best guard in the country when you talk about all-around play. His ability to shoot from the outside, athleticism, getting to the rim, being a two-way player with his football background allows him to defend. I mean, it's a reason why he's a first-team All-American and he's playing high-level basketball.
All right, Richard, we got about 2-3 minutes left for the Arkansas Razorbacks. Now, Richard, whoever thought that Arkansas, coached by John Calipari, with that NIL money at the number 10 seed, would be trying to wear those Cinderella shoes, those slippers?
I think it probably was only John Calipari and the people within that locker room. I saw this team in SEC play when they were winless. And
yes,
morale did not seem to be of a team that was going to make this type of run. But in the shoot-arounds, you could listen to John Calipari, and he was continued to be confident. And they got some wins early on and got some momentum. But more than anything, I think they learned how to play without Boogie Flan, who went down with an injury.
yes.
They picked up their defensive intensity because athletically, this is a team that can go toe-to-toe with anyone in the country. And they've started to find their groove. They've been able to grind out some wins. And they got a good draw in the NCAA tournament. Who can say that's a good draw when you get Bill Self in Kansas in the first round, and then you got Rick in St. John?
Yeah.
The Arkansas team is fearless. They are high-level players, and obviously they've been able to hit their stride. And I don't know if March is going to be over for them at the Sweet 16. I mean, they look confident, and they can get it done. And who knows where the Razorbacks can finish.
Right. I think the health and the rookie season of the coach and the team together was the reason they were faltering. But they have the talent, as you said. So Arkansas, that's a team that they have the size, the speed, and you played in the SEC, so you can beat some good teams. That region, the West, Richard, do you think Florida is still the favorite in that region? We got about a minute left.
I do think Florida is the favorite just because they have the experience. When you have three guards who are veteran guards, seniors, Elijah Martin has been to a Final Four before. Will Richard and Walter Clayton got exited in the first round of the NCAA tournament last year, and they were beat in the championship game after Micah Handlogden went down with an injury in the SEC championship final. That type of motivation that they had all season long has been a quiet chip on their shoulder. And I think the country wasn't talking about Florida in the SEC, but they're here. And I still think they're the favorite to get out of that region and get to the Final Four and see what they can do in the last weekend.
Yeah, he's a top-level coach in Florida. We know that they've won back-to-back titles with Billy Donovan in the early part of this century. But Todd, he's put together a staff and a roster that's second to none. And I think the luck of the draw, he's out in San Francisco where he's going to have some fun. Hi, I'm AP Stedham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greer's.com and use Groceries to Go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it. And we're back with AP as we see it, in our special guest, college basketball analyst extraordinaire Richard Hendricks, two-time All-SEC performer at the University of Alabama, played in Europe for 13 years, winning the MVP in the EuroLeague, Euro Cup, and his forte was double-double. Double-double at Alabama, led the SEC double-doubles in the professional ranks. He did as well. So Richard knows a lot about effort, because to get double doubles, you have to have tremendous effort. So, but Richard, we're going to move on to this Midwest region. We have Tennessee versus Kentucky in the basketball state of Indiana, Indianapolis. So what a rivalry to move up to Indianapolis for the NCAA tournament. They're number 2 and the number 3 team in the Midwest.
Well, that's going to be a big time showdown. The third time this season. You can only think that for Tennessee, you have to be saying to yourself that Kentucky's not going to beat us 3 times in this season. But this time, the stakes are a little bit higher. The pressure will change in this one. And Kentucky is obviously in the Sweet 16 because they're playing good basketball. This is a team that's been coached well. They have endured injuries all season long, and they have had the Vols number. So Rick Barnes is definitely going to have to lean on his defensive end, but it's going to be the offense that Tennessee is going to have to get it done in this game. They're going to have some big performances, particularly down the clutch of this one. So it should be a lot of fun to see who's going to, but at least with the SEC in this one, you have a guarantee of a team that's going to be moving forward to the Elite Eight.
That's right. That continues to impress people around the country. You have a team in the finals of the Region 8. Richard, we're moving to the South. This is a cool bracket because you have Auburn, number 1 in that region, in Atlanta, right up the road from the Plains at Auburn. And you have Ole Miss. Auburn's number 1 playing number 5, Michigan, and Michigan State number 2 playing number 6, Ole Miss. So it's SEC in both games. And you have the whole state of Michigan down here. Detroit will be in Atlanta.
Wow. That's going to be a big time showdown. And listen, it's wide open in that region. I mean, when you talk about Auburn, the number 1 overall seed, they haven't been playing to their standard that they set all season long. And they're going to be playing a Michigan team that's well coached. Dusty May's been to a Final Four. Vlad Golden has been to a Final Four with FAU, and he has the positional size that can potentially guard maybe the player of the year and quite certainly the best big man in the country, Jamai Broome, to guard him one-on-one. And if he has the ability to guard him one-on-one, then that will keep Michigan out of defensive rotation, which will allow them to guard the shooters of Auburn better. Danny Wolf, 7-foot point forward, is going to be something to watch. He's going to have a big game. If he can handle the pressure of the guard play on the defensive end of Auburn, then it can be something that can give Auburn a challenge. But Auburn, obviously, has been a strong team all year long. The guard play, shooting from the outside, being able to guard their men individually without having to have over-helping situations has been big for the Tigers. So it's going to be a big-time showdown. And on the other side, Ole Miss has been playing good ball too. So two physical brands, 2 really good coaches. So, as we touched on right there, this is the coaches' bracket right here. And it's going to be a lot of fun to see the adjustments that will be made between these 4 teams. Yeah,
Padula was a nice pickup for Ole Miss. I mean, Richard, I don't know about you, but I always mention ball in the basket. That's the name of the game. And he could put it in the basket at clutch times.
Huge pickup. And this is a team that's a veteran team, maybe not a lot of experience in the NCAA tournament and definitely not together, but you have players that play with balance under Chris Beard. They have, I believe it's around 10 players who have scored 1,000 points in their career at their respective schools before joining forces. So they're starting to play really good basketball. And they don't turn the ball over. They'll make sure that they don't beat themselves. They'll have to continue to try to finish off games. In the NCAA tournament, they've gotten these big leads and allowed the teams to get back in it and make it interesting. But they are a well-prepared team, and it should be a really good matchup in that one to move forward to the 8.
Hey, Richard, thank you for that. On the men's side, we're going to shift over to the women. And we know, Richard, you've been involved covering that brand of basketball, the women's basketball. It's more fundamental, but they're getting more and more athletic, making shots from half court like the men do, and the spectacular plays in the lane as well. The SEC 6 teams, we start with the Birmingham 2 region. There's only 2 regions, Spokane and Birmingham. Birmingham to South Carolina versus Maryland.
Well, South Carolina and Don Staley, they're loaded. They have players that can go 10, 11 deep. They're physical. They have great positional size, and they can beat you by outscoring you, or they can just play tough defense and make it a really tough game for you. Maryland barely made it into the Sweet 16. To me, maybe the best game that you've seen in the NCAA tournament, taking Alabama to double overtime and winning that one. And that was a heartbreaking loss for the Crimson Tide, but Sarah Ashley Barker and company, outstanding performance, 45 points. They had Maryland on the ropes, on the road. 3 free throws to send the game into double overtime with less than a second to go on the clock. Clutch performance, a memorable performance in a losing effort. But it's going to be fun to watch on the women's side. As you mentioned, this is an all-time high. And a lot of teams feel like in this season that they really have a legitimate chance of being a national champion.
Birmingham 3, we have Tennessee and Texas. We know that some people say Tennessee is the mother of Texas. They're going back to the Alamo, which will be in San Antonio for the Final Four of the men's side. But Tennessee versus Texas.
Well, which one is the real UT? That's the question. Find out.
Right.
Coach Caldwell, Kim Caldwell's done a really good job. He has a unique style at Tennessee. They can turn up the pressure on you and definitely speed you up. They're going to be subbing out players, 5 at a time, every 60 to 90 seconds, which makes it fun to watch. And they hope that they can wear teams down. It's worked in the NCAA tournament, and they were a seed that was a 5 seed that had to go on the road to get it to advance into the SEC. I guess it is the SEC showdown, but into the Sweet 16. But
Right.
Texas, one team in the SEC all year long. Vic Schaefer has been coaching tremendously. He was the SEC Coach of the Year. Madison Booker was the Player of the Year. She's a big-time scorer and a matchup problem all over the court. So this is going to be one that Tennessee is going to have to bring their A game, because Texas is a load to handle, and that'll be another really good one down there in that region.
Yeah, Vic Schaefer, he discusses winning championships. He thinks he's got the team, so he doesn't shy away. We're going to go to the Spokane 4. That's Oklahoma versus UConn.
Well, listen, Gino RM, he's back. He's got Paige Beckers. He's got Sarah Strong, really good players who can impact the game in so many ways. But Jenny Baranchis and his Oklahoma team is really good. I think they're starting to hit their stride. Reagan Beers is a tough force down low. It really can impact the game. Has a nice touch as well. So Oklahoma's playing well, but UConn, anytime you're playing them in the NCAA tournament, you have to respect them. I believe Gino might be a 10-time national champion, if not more.
I think it's 11, Richard. I think
it's 11. Listen, I apologize. You can't leave one out. So many, he doesn't even have enough fingers for the rings that he has.
Yeah.
One where you'll definitely see some elite action, and they're starting to play some really good ball. It's a team that won at South Carolina this season, so they can play against the top teams in the country, and he's looking to see if he can reestablish himself at the top of the totem pole.
Oh yeah, I think that was about a 20-point win at South Carolina too. It was big. It wasn't 10 or anything. It was big.
I do feel like this year, when I look at the women's game, the field is a little bit more open than what it has been in the past. Now, with that being said, I wouldn't be surprised if South Carolina put it together and just dominated all the way through the tournament. They have the skill and the capability and obviously the coaching to be able to do that. But this year, that to me, it feels like the teams that are left in the field probably feel that if they get a bounce to go their way and a break to go somewhere in the bracket, that it can be a little bit of a surprise of who can win the national championship. And obviously you talked about some things in other regions, but Juju Watkins out with the injury. That's going to be significant moving forward for other teams and their advancement.
Oh, absolutely. Spokane 1, we have Ole Miss and UCLA. UCLA was ranked number 1 during the season. Very good team. Ole Miss, they're in the tournament. They have a shot.
They definitely have a shot. And if you talk to Coach Yo, she's going to tell you that they defend. It's a team that leans on their defensive ability and what they're able to do to just shut teams down. So they'll have to do that. But this is going to be a different animal. If you talk about Betts down low for UCLA, 6'7", really can dominate the game. That brings a different level of physicality that you have to deal with. On the women's side, you might not have the players that have the ability to play above the rim, but if you have that extreme positional size, that changes the game. You can rim run, you can draw fouls, you can get point blank buckets, and you can always stop runs of other teams by throwing it in the post. And UCLA has that luxury.
Yeah, I think it's very nice that the women's game, they came up with that plan. I think the 2 regions is good. Richard, we just have a minute left. What's your feeling on having just 2 regions for the women's game?
Oh, I think it's good. I think they've come up with some good ideas. They've made the regular season count by rewarding it, by getting the top 4 seeds to be allowed to host the NCAA tournament. When I watch on TV, it's been some electric crowds in there, and that's what the women's game deserves. It's at an all-time high. It's a great game. If you're not watching it, you should. These women and coaches do a great job as far as X's and O's and preparation and playing high-level basketball, and it deserves a good fan base and a good following. I think coming to the 2 regions is going to allow more fans to see more high-quality basketball, which will continue to grow the game.
Hey, Richard Hendricks, former University of Alabama, 2-time All-SEC performer, drafted in the pros, ended up in Europe for 13 years, long, successful career, the double-double man. I think, Richard, you're the best linguist we've had on the show. I'm going to give you that award, the best linguist on the show, pronouncing all those names. We want to thank you very, very much, and we'll be right back after these messages with AP as we see. Hi, I'm AP Stedham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greer's.com and use Groceries to Go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it. We want to thank our guest, Richard Hendricks. He gave us a very thorough lowdown on the NCAA basketball tournament with the men and the women. We want to thank him so much. And I don't know if we've had a better interview with basketball. He knew both sides. Not many people are that versatile, but he knew both teams and the names. And as I said, I think he gets the Linguist of the Year award on this show, pronouncing all those names. But thank you, Richard Hendricks, for being on AP As We See It and discussing the NCAA tournament, men's and women's basketball with regards to the SEC. One thing we wanted to mention right now is Texas has hired a new men's basketball coach. And Sean Miller, coming from Xavier, he's a winner. He's been a winner in his entire career, about 3 decades. But some people are saying about the University of Texas, and I tend to disagree, that they think that Texas cannot have an outstanding basketball team year to year out. And I'm of the persuasion that Texas, they have all the resources that any school would need to have a good program in any sport. Basketball, they've been to the Final Four, they've been to Sweet 16s. I think Sean Miller, he's in the SEC now, and we see that the SEC has 7 teams in the Sweet 16, 14 overall. Even Texas, they fired their coach, Rodney Terry. They made the NCAA tournament this year, and they fired their coach. So that's the high expectations you have at Texas. Most teams, you're normally not firing a coach that made the NCAA tournament. But Sean Miller had been hired, and he'll have everything he needs. He has contacts all over the country because he was in the Pac-12 with Arizona. He was at Xavier twice, so he knows many parts of the country. He'll look globally for players because Texas has that name and attraction. And the main thing with having a winning program is the leader at the top. We've seen that time and time again in football, in basketball, men's and women. You have the right person at the top. You can launch your program to be good for a decade if that person chooses to stay there with that university. So I think Sean Miller, it's a very good hire. He's going to have every opportunity. And we've seen successful coaches at Texas, and they haven't been able to get it done. Shaka Smart, for one, came from VCU, a mid-major program. But I think Sean Miller, because he's been at the Pac-12 in Arizona, they have a big name, big reputation. I think he understands the stakes. I think he's capable to get things done on a championship level, compete for championships in the conference, and reach the Sweet 16s, which he's done many, many times, the Regional 8 final, and also reach the Final Four. I think he's going to be able to be very successful with the Texas Longhorns men's basketball program. We also want to mention the three coaches were hired on the women's side as well. There was just one coach hired on the men's side, but 3 women coaches were hired in the SEC. Missouri hired the former Tennessee coach Kelly Harper. She knows how to win, and Mizzou has had winning programs with their women's program. So, in Arkansas hired a new coach, Kelsey Musick. She's been a winner, and Arkansas has been to the Final Four, so we know they can win there. And then Auburn, we know they've been to the Final Four. They hired Larry Vickers from Norfolk State. He knows how to win. He had championships there at an HBCU school. But all those 3 programs, Mizzou, Arkansas, and Auburn on the women's side, they've won, but they all have 3 new coaches on the women's side, just one on the men's. So we want to just look at now, we're going to look at the NCAA tournament on the men's side. We had that conversation with Richard Hendricks, but it's something kind of interesting. In each region, I'd just like to bring this out. In the East region, Alabama's there as a number 2 seed playing BYU, number 6. But Duke is there as well, the number 1 seed, very powerful team, good basketball team. But there's a lot of fans in that region that'll be cheering for Duke. So that might be a little advantage for them. If you believe that a crowd can make a difference, the East region in Newark, New Jersey, Alabama will be there. They have to beat BYU out of the Big 12 to reach that championship game, the Region 8 championship in the East. But that's just a little bit of information. Duke has quite a bit of fans up in that region of the country, even though they're located in Durham, North Carolina. Let's look at the West. We mentioned that Florida's out there number 1, Arkansas is number 10. They don't oppose each other in this first round in the West. But Todd Golden, the coach of the University of Florida, he coached at the University of San Francisco. So you're thinking, because the teams are from Maryland and Texas Tech, the advantage would be with the fan base, probably San Francisco. All of the patrons that followed the San Francisco team in the past when Todd was there, probably that crowd will be a little bit stronger for Todd Golden. So that could be a slight difference maker. And Florida's, I believe they're the best team in the country of the versatility we spoke about, Richard Hendricks. So, but I think that's a slight advantage, and that's all you need to win these games when they get tight. Maybe they're cheering when the other team's shooting a free throw and keeping it loud, whereas when Florida's on the line, it's a little bit quieter. So something like that could change a ball game, believe me, just being on the free throw line. Then you look at the Midwest. You have in the first, one of the teams is Houston, number 1, and play Purdue. Well, Purdue's from Indiana, and that game, the Midwest, is held in Indianapolis. So the Purdue fans will be out in full force. So that's an advantage for them. And then you have Tennessee and Kentucky, SEC big rivals, border rivals. I mean, I'll tell you how far it goes back. When Rupp Arena was built, Tennessee built their arena. As I learned, I think it was 500 more people in Knoxville for that arena in Knoxville, Tennessee, just to be a little bit bigger than Kentucky. So that rivalry goes way back. But Indianapolis is close by to Tennessee and Kentucky. They're going to have their fans there. I mean, Purdue's going to have a load as well, quite a few, but Tennessee and Kentucky, they're going to be out there with their fans buying up all those tickets. When the SEC people, they're very enthusiastic, and they find the tickets. They pay the prices. So I think that's an advantage for Tennessee and Kentucky to be playing in the Midwest region in Indianapolis. We know that Tennessee plays Kentucky, so somebody will be in the final of that region, an SEC team. If it's Houston or Purdue, the SEC is going to be represented. They're going to buy those tickets. So that's an advantage for the SEC to maybe have a chance to win that region. Now we head to the South. Auburn is number 1. Ole Miss is number 6. Auburn plays Michigan, number 5. Michigan State, number 2, plays Ole Miss. Auburn traveling up to Atlanta, just a short trip, couple hours or less. So Auburn's going to have a big crowd in Atlanta. And that'll help them because and the Auburn fans, the basketball fans, they travel very well ever since Bruce Pearl came alive and he came on board here. And I think that's an advantage for Auburn. And then Ole Miss, they're an SEC school. They're going to be traveling to Atlanta. They'll have a crowd of people there as well, especially if it's an Auburn-Ole Miss final. They'll gobble up those tickets, and the SEC will have a chance to have another team reach the Final Four. And as we stated early in this process, we said they need one team to reach the Final Four, hopefully 2, maybe more. But 7 teams in the Sweet 16, that is phenomenal. That is the zenith of SEC basketball. 7 teams out of this 16 in the Sweet 16. That's never happened. That set a record. They have 14 teams in the tournament that beat the Big East by 3. That was a few years ago, the Big East. And then 7, that breaks the record. I think it was 5. So they have 7 teams in the Sweet 16. So the SEC basketball has really, the trajectory has been upward ever since they really made a concerted effort to excel in the game of basketball. And we want to mention on the women's side, we said Birmingham 2, South Carolina, Maryland. Maryland, gave Alabama a great ball game. Sarah Ashley Barker, we want to salute her. 45 points. She did everything she could to try to win that double overtime game in College Park, Maryland, and they came up short. But that's the 4th all-time best single game total. 45 points. That was, and I've seen great performances through the years on the gridiron, on the hardwood court. Sarah Ashley Barker, she made herself into an all-SEC player 2 times. She built herself up played a couple of years at Georgia, transferred to Alabama, her home state. Of course, her dad was an All-SEC quarterback, national championship quarterback, fifth in the Heisman Trophy for the University of Alabama. But Sarah Ashley Barker, we want to salute her because that was a spectacular, sensational performance, 45 points, and especially at the end when she was fouled with a second left, had to hit 3 free throws in a row to keep her team to go to the next overtime. There's not many people, men and women, would make those 3 free throws to keep their season alive. And she was, it was beautiful to watch that 45-point effort. And people will remember it for a long time. And I wish that Alabama, just for her sake and the team, that they would have reached Birmingham. But Maryland played great on the other side as well. And they ended up winning, and they'll be in Birmingham to play South Carolina. Tennessee and Texas in Birmingham 3. You have LSU, North Carolina State, and Spokane 1. And you have Spokane for Oklahoma and UConn. And then you have Ole Miss and UCLA in Spokane number 1. It should be a good women's tournament. 6 teams from the SEC in the Sweet 16, but that's nothing new. The SEC has been powerful for 4 decades on the women's side, but it's the best year in men's and women's basketball combined, with having all those teams. 7 in the Sweet 16 on the men, 6 on the women's side. But we want to thank everybody this week for listening in, and make sure you subscribe and check our social media platforms, YouTube channels. And we'll be back next week from San Antonio, the Final Four of the men's, with AP as we see it. Thank you very much.